we would be discussing about data types, variables, initializing values, and declaring variables. First, in order to understand what a data type is, let's deal with variables first because it would make more sense if you understand what are variables and how to initialize them, and then we can come to data types. So, exactly what are variables? So, the variables are some entities that we use to store our values in it. So let's consider A. Let's assume that A is a variable and it can store some value for us because now we are not exactly sure what value is going to be stored every time, right? Because maybe in our program we need a value 10 and at another instance this value be modified into 20 or 30. So at this time we can't exactly have values independently in our programming language, so we always assign these values to some variable. When you assign them, you can always refer to this value 10 using this variable A. So though the values are going to be modified in the further program, still let's say the value of 10 has changed to 30. So at some instance, if you want to use the value 30 again, you can just use the variable A, because now as 10 has been modified into 30, it's stored in A, so you can use it and you can get whatever result you are want. Generally, in simple terms, variable is a container which can store some value for us. So and these containers are some types. Few containers store only integer values, let's say 10, and there are few containers which stores only a single character, let me say A, and there are few containers which stores few decimal values, 3.5, and there are containers which store a large amount of decimal values, say 4.57676 up to some 9 decimals, okay? And there are few containers which store a series of continued characters. As you can see here, there is only one character. There are also containers that can store multiple characters, ABC. We call this as string. So generally what a string is, there are multiple characters together. Now as we said, the containers are of different types, right? This is of integer type, this is of a character type, this is of a decimal type. So if a decimal point, let's say 1.2357, if after decimal point there are up to 7 decimal points, okay? So if the whatever decimal value it is there, it falls under the length of 7, we call it as float. And if the length of the decimal points is more than 7 and less than 15, so let's consider this as 7th decimal value, maybe some 8. So if there are so much of decimal points and they cross 7, then you might consider them to be stored in a type called double. So the simple thing is, if there are total number of decimal points are under 8, which means there are 7 or less, you would consider them as float. If there are more than 7, more than 7 digits after the decimal point, then you can store them in a type called double. So, and string. String is a type that has multiple characters together. Now, as I said, these containers are of different types, right? So these different types, these types are called data types. So what does a data type mean is, uh, it tells which type of the data. As here, let's consider an example equals to 10. Now data type of A is integer. Sorry, this. So integer because the data that it holds is 10. So which type of data it is? It's an integer value. So it's an int. Similarly, if it is C, and the thing is, okay, now let's talk about initializing. So what does an initializing mean? Initializing means is you are assigning something as the initial position at the beginning. So as we said, these are variables. Now we have taken A, B, C as rough variables. I didn't tell the exact rules that we need to be followed. I will come to that. So first we'll talk initializing values. So if there's a variable A, you can initialize a value by keeping this equals to operator, and then you can initialize it. Similarly, B, now the thing is, for character values, we need to initialize them using single quotes. And for strings, you can use some variable C and you can initialize hello. So when you use this equals to operator and you assign the value to the variable, it's called as initializing the values. Now let's talk about what are the rules of variables. So the rules of variables are simple. Rules of writing the variables. So this can start from uppercase letter or lowercase letter. These are case sensitive or programming language, which means small a and capital A are completely different. They are not considered as same. So if in a hurry, if you write a equals to 10, and in the later program if you use capital A, then this won't work because you have used a small a initially. So in order to use this very same value, you need to use small a, not capital A, in later programming. And your variable doesn't need to be only of a single character, it can be of multiple characters. So a variable can be ab, you can write ab equals 10. And there's another rule, you can also use numerical values in the variable, but the numerical values cannot take the first place. I mean, you cannot write, okay, it looks like L, so you cannot write 3ab. This is not a variable, it is not considered as a variable, whereas you can write ab3, it is considered as a variable. You also you can also write it in this way, a3b, and you can use special characters, but the only special character that you can use is underscore. And you can use underscore in the beginning or in the between or in the end. So using a, b, 3c when this is a variable. You cannot use any other special character, and so these are the simple rules. You need to always start your variable with an underscore or with a character. Numericals cannot start in the beginning place of a variable, and you can only use numerical, character and underscore. Combination of these three you can make a variable, excluding excluding that the numerical won't be in the first place. So that's it. Now whenever we use a variable, we need to define which type of variable it is. Because it's a programming language, we need to tell initially itself that whatever variable we are using, which type of data would we be using along with it. So if you want to use a, then we should do tell in the before instance whether we are using it to store integer values or float values or double or character or string. So there are data types. So let's see different types of data types. Integer, character, string, float, double, and there is also another data type called bool. So integer stores numerical values, character store a single character value, string stores a continuous character values, float stores decimal point values up to 7 decimal length, and double stores more than 7 decimal length to 15 decimal length, and bool stores only two values, either true or false. It just stores only these two values. So in the programming language, we use integer as int. We don't write complete integer, we write int, and for char we write char, and for string we write the complete name string, and for float we use the same complete name float, and for double we use the complete name double. Only for integer and character we write the short names int and char, and also for the bool we use the same name bool. Bool is used to store either true or false value. So these are data types, and we talked about variables and initializing values to the variables. And thing is that declaration. So when you declare, it is not necessary to initialize the variable in the beginning stage itself. You can first declare it as int a, and at the further in writing your further program, you can initialize the value with a equals 10. It's not mandatory to declare and initialize at same point. It depends on your use, however you can use it whatever way you want. But initializing in the beginning stage is a good practice, because you might forget to initialize and you might use the value in the later part of the program thinking that you did initialize. So initializing is done in the beginning stage for the safety purpose, that's it, and it's suggestible to initialize in the beginning stages. Now let's write this everything in this program. As I said earlier, is the basic skeleton of the programming language of C++. So here let's declare and initialize our variables with their data types. So let's take int a. So I did declare a variable a with data type integer and initialize the value 10. So thing I didn't say in the previous class is about the semicolon. So in C++, after every statement you put a semicolon. So why do you use semicolon is it tells a compiler. So compiler is it's a machine that helps us to convert a programming language, and it it uses our programming language and derives some meaning to it. So what does the compiler do is once it reads a semicolon, it understands that a line is completed and it goes to the next line. So it generally marks the end of your specific function in that line. So you should write semicolon for every little function that you write in your every line. So coming to another data types, char, you can give any name. So let's try to give the different names because we also learned how to write variable names. So let's say a, b, c, 10 equals to c. As I said, characters need to be defined in the single characters only. And string, data type string, and you give a variable. So let's give a variable called name underscore code. And when you assign string, you need to use double quotes. So your value needs to be written in the double quotes. And then float. And thing is, when you write a value in float, you cannot just write 10.76 because by default compiler thinks that whatever value you would be writing, it will consider them as double data type. So in order to specify it as float data type exclusively, you need to write this letter f in the end, small f, or else this would be considered as double by default. So you don't really need to write float every time. You can use double data type uh, because double has higher range, and it in the calculations it would give a better precision if you have a data that has more number of decimal values. And now they double c equals to 15.767. If you don't write f, it do consider it as double data type. And bool k equals to true. So it stores the value true or false. So generally in programming language, what does the true is? Implicitly, the true is considered as a numerical value 1 and the false is considered as a numerical value 0. Now the importance of this little bool values true and false, you will understand it in your coding journey. So in the end, okay, sorry, I don't have much space left here. So in the end of your body, you write return 0 and you would close it. So that's it. So whatever the data types and declaring and initializing you have done, you need to do in this little main program. So this main program is mandatory in every program because this main program is called by the compiler itself. So in this main program you write the important functions because this is the program that runs initially than the functions that you write. Now we didn't come to functions till now, but in the further classes we'll be learning functions where you can use a specific mechanism for each function. Now in order that those functions run, you need to run them with the help of this very main program because the functions, if those functions are to be executed or they have to be run, without this main program you cannot get access to those functions. So all the important features, everything of this program are to be written in this int main function. So that's it. We are done with data types, variables, initializing and declaring. Happy coding. Thank you.